NSFW waiters of Reddit. What's some fricked up shoot you overheard while waiting tables? Two daughters talking about how they had dosed their mother's mimosa with ecstasy at brunch. I know I'm super late, but I waited on a table where a man had just found out he had inoperable pancreatic cancer. He told me about it like I was a family member. I think he was in shock. I didn't know how to respond to him, so I just acted like he was a family member and hugged him before he left. I'll never forget it. Watched a nicely dressed family cry and cheer after watching their son graduate college from a live stream on a tiny phone propped up on salt and pepper shakers. The weather was very icy and they couldn't drive all the way out there safely. My manager bought all their meals. I once had a woman call her daughter out in front of me for being a bitch because she's sad about her divorce. The woman looked so embarrassed though she was being a total asshole. I just wanted to know if they needed a box. I served this table who got a phone call that their son had been in a horrible car accident just as they got their food. Their reaction was super rough. I was on the other end of this once. I'd just been in an accident that involved me being torn up by a boat propeller at a lake. I was fully conscious in the ambulance and the EMT asked if I wanted to call someone. I asked him to call my mom who was apparently out to lunch with my sister and aunt. The EMT told my mom what happened and where I was headed, and then my mom proceeded to hang up the phone and continue eating. My sister immediately left and met me at the hospital, though. So not all bad. Edit, a little clarity. My mother was eating, EMT was not. I'm fairly certain I witnessed the beginnings of a divorce. I don't remember the specifics, but it started out as a normal couple, but soon turned to a lot of why didn't you tell me? You should have. Can we not do this in public, and things of the sort. The husband left before the meal was over, and the wife was crying. Giving the check to her was one of the most awkward things I've ever done. Apparently, I took too long getting this woman her quesadilla burger, so in protest she defecated on the table. Cops were called, and a fun time was had by all. I worked for a restaurant that had 3 owners. One of them had a wife that died, but he was dating again. He came into his own restaurant on Valentine's Day with his GF, her kids, and began to cry at the table. I was their waiter. It was incredibly uncomfortable for everyone. Not a waiter, but as a customer I heard a waitress complain to a coworker that she ate out the manager for a shift off and didn't get it. I bussed tables in LA for a summer at a swanky steak restaurant on Sunset. I saw lots of celebrities, but Tom Green will always take the cake for a story. He moved his table so the whole restaurant could see him, flanked by 2 prostitutes wearing almost nothing. They were disgusting all evening, not enough to get thrown out. No idea how likely that would have been anyway, but there was lots of rubbing, and one of the hookers flashed some nipple. Used to wait tables. Once, around 9:30 at night, this couple comes in with a small boy who was around 4 years old and in his pajamas. The man and woman make out the whole time they're there. The kid, who is being pretty well behaved all things considered, says I wish I could go to bed. His mom replies I wish I had a little girl. F King Beach. Man, I walked up to the saddest thing I've ever seen in public. It was a table of 4 people, mom, dad, and 2 kids. Dad and the kids sat silently with the saddest expressions on their faces, while mom had her laptop out on the table and a headset on her head, and was cheerily chatting away with someone about the work she was doing on her computer. It might have been real estate sales. Once we had a table, a middle-aged couple, hashing out their divorce over some very expensive steaks. It was clear the husband had initiated the conversation, and probably did so in a restaurant, to prevent a blowout argument. The wife was very unhappy, and inquired about the woman he played tennis with. Based on his reaction, she wasn't far off the mark. They were seated in the middle of a fairly intimate restaurant, so most of the patrons and staff could hear. We all felt really bad for her. I worked in a resort, so I've heard a number of failed marriage proposals. I've commented about them before. The worst was the guy who got "I've told you, I'm never going to marry you." He stormed off, and she finished the desert the ring came on. He eventually came back though. Felt bad for him, but she clearly wasn't leading him on. My girlfriend and I have both waited on a dominatrix and a client of hers more than once. It was weird, but not nearly as weird as you might expect. She makes him wear women's underwear under a strategically poorly buttoned button-down shirt, so people could potentially see his pink sheer bra, and tips really well. Usually asks the hostess for one of the more experienced servers, and explains the situation to him/her beforehand. Definitely a little odd, but not like she was pegging him at the table or anything. And then she stabbed me and touched my scrotum. I think I've commented this before, but I had a guy at a table decide to tell the rest of his family that he had skin cancer right as I was delivering their drinks. I just said, it'll give you some more time. Hurricane Katrina was fantastic for the Gulf Coast. Real estate agent. I work at a sit-down coffee shop where waiters come up and take your order and you can have a running tab. Long story short, a very beautiful woman came in, opened her tab and sat down. Initially, I thought that she was holding interviews, common thing, but turned out that she was confronting women that her husband was cheating on her with. 5 different women came in, one right after the other, and along the lines, said to each, I know you've been sleeping with my husband, and you can have him, etc. in such a calm and professional manner, then would dismiss them. She then called her ex-husband and told him that she met with all these women and said that she was at my coffee shop with divorce papers that he needed to sign. Needless to say, he arrived, signed the papers, and yelled at her for ruining his relationships with all of them. She was a complete badass and handled everything so strongly, calmly, and I'm glad she got away from that pose. I didn't judge her. I was clearing a table at a 40th when I heard the mother of the birthday boy, lady I would guess was in her 70s, loudly proclaim, 40 years ago today, son, my posse was wrapped around your head. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. The son looked mortified. You see here people cheating on their partners more than I expected. My sister and I used to have a tradition of going out to brunch every weekend to the same diner, and we always had the same server. When things started getting serious with my now wife, we decided to alternate weekends. After a couple months we realized that was stupid and all went together. Come to find out that the waitress thought I was just a cheating dirtbag the entire time we were alternating. I wonder to this day how much of her spit I ingested with my breakfast. Often would have groups of women who shame each other into sharing dishes they clearly intended to eat themselves. Oh, you won't eat all that, right? It's so much food it's extremely uncomfortable. I've witnessed the most awkward date I've ever seen on Valentine's Day. They were both on their phone constantly, and he would leave the table multiple times for long periods of time. I didn't overhear them talking, but it was just painful to watch. They both didn't want to be there. Edit. Spelling. About a year ago I saw a couple at a table near mine. They weren't on their phones, but they weren't talking to each other at all, just looking away. Fast forward to when I was leaving, and they were in the parking lot screaming at each other. I'll never forget, I felt so bad for the both of them, and at the same time, was happy that I wasn't dealing, or had dealt with that kind of drama in a long time. Not a waitress, but while dining in an upscale restaurant in Milwaukee, I overheard a wealthy woman explain to her friend why she should only hire middle children as housekeepers, because they are used to being told what to do and always know their place. A man was with his side chick and her whole family, like a party of 10 to 12. The wife enters the restaurant screaming beach, horse, etc., and proceeds to rip the side chick out of her chair by her hair. More yelling and then cops. It was some Jerry Springer shoot. I'll never forget that blood-curdling scream as the huge hunk of hair ripped off her scalp. I once had a lady out to dinner with her 2 friends. They ordered a glass of Louis XIII each. That's $600 right there. Every time I walked by, they would raise their glasses and toast to in a bath towel, each time picking a different male actor. Turns out she had just gotten a lot of money from her divorce, and she was quite happy to spend it. 2 old couples. One guy said, now that a black family moved in next door, I'll never sell my house. The other guy said, if you see him outside, when people are looking at your house, ask him about his guard. The home buyers will just think as the landscaping guy. Not overheard, but when I was serving This very overweight woman's left breast kept coming out of her shirt. She was in a very visible table on the end, and she was not doing it on purpose, but she was oblivious to it. Not a waiter, but I once heard the very classy couple next to us say, "Baby, your dick tastes different. Is you cheating?" I was serving one table where this woman had an addiction to taking it in the ass. What's fricked up is she was sitting there with her 3 friends telling them about it, and when I came to pour drinks, that didn't stop her from talking about it, so I got the inside scoop. I heard a lady tell her elderly dad, "I hope you have money saved up, because there's no way I'm paying for your funeral." Worked at a knockoff Italian restaurant a couple years in college. Let's just call it the Livezard. Guy and girl come in, get sat at my table, I get their drink order. As in putting the drink order in, he comes over and gives me a ring and a $20 bill and asks me to put the ring in her drink. Bartender is making their drinks and I can hear him start to say how much he loves her, how he wants to spend the rest of their lives together and such. I plop the ring in the drink, just as she figures out what's going on. She gets up and screams, "I told you no the first time," and proceeds to storm out. Everyone is silent. He runs over, pours the drink out on the bar, grabs the ring and runs out. Basically got paid $20 to see their drama. I work for a family restaurant, so not a lot of messed up stuff happens. Well, once I was waiting a table of this couple who I swear was 2 seconds away from breaking up / divorce. They hated their kids and were complaining about each other the whole time. The wife was literally like, "Excuse him," every time he supposedly did something wrong. It was pretty fricked up. Yesterday I was serving a group of guys in their 20s. Their whole convo about girls, love and pronoun was very comical. At the end they asked me, "Hey, my buddy likes to look at pronoun with a dude freaking a 6 doll. Is that gay?" I just bust out laughing and replied, "Whatever floats your boat." I have a guest who regularly spends thousands of dollars on 2 or 3 bottles of wine for the evening. He and his date are dining in a private room when I open the door to hear her tell him no blood and nothing on the face. Bartender here. I once had a group of 4 mid-20s girls day drinking to celebrate one of their birthdays. Halfway through, birthday girl gets a call, leaves the bar, and 20 minutes later comes back crying. Her boyfriend of 4 years dumped her over the phone from a long trip in Peru because he met another girl there and they have so much more in common. She spent the next hour sobbing at the bar on her birthday. The number one kinky question I would get from couples businessman / husband plus escort / mistress combos was, "Hey kid, take a good look at her. Now be honest and tell me you wouldn't like to frick her." Sometimes the woman was gorgeous, but more often just barely attractive or a face only her mother could love. In all instances I said yes, to secure a good tip. Heard some forest aid employers talking about how one of them went to the woods to frick with a woman. They found a dead man there, fricked first and then called the police. Another one said that he was so sorry about that one of his co-workers died, but happy that this was the perfect moment to frick his spouse. I was working a birthday party in the banquet room. When I went in a little before the party started, there was just an older lady in the room by herself. She looked at the windows, they were closed, and said, "They're all staring at me." I asked who, and she just said, "Never mind." I didn't know if I should feel sad or spooked. It's not super fricked up, but I once heard a middle-aged woman describe an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, scene by scene, to one of her friends. In 2012. Who the frick does that? I had a guy, white man, looked mid-50s aged, come in on a busy day with his wife. They were very pleasant and tipped nicely. He came back the very next day with her. As they were leaving after service, I said to them, "It was nice seeing you two yesterday. Have a great day." He stopped and told her to wait outside while he went to use the restroom. Then he comes back to me and tips me $100 in cash and told me next time I serve him to never say that to him again. Just a simple "have a great day." I was like, okay. Apparently the second time he dined in, he was actually with his wife and the woman the previous day was someone else. I guess I didn't pay too much attention to detail. Then he comes back again the next day with a really young black girl, and I just realized he was dating escorts. He left me a very generous tip to keep my mouth shut. Edit. I didn't clarify earlier, but I was a tea server in a hotel. One day I was grabbing the iPad for open tables from the main restaurant and I saw him there with a different black woman. He had a bouquet of roses displayed on their table. Had a two-top come in around 7 o'clock at night. Seemed pretty normal, older Spanish looking man with a little Asian girl. Long story short, we give out coloring paper and crayons for the little ones. So by the time I got to bussing my table to seat another, I found the little girl's paper and in red crayon was written "Call the police." At the time I was pretty sure it was the little girl just messing around, but I do not take something like this lightly. Human trafficking is a thing. So I informed my manager and we called the police. Turns out it was not a human trafficking situation, thank goodness. False alarm, but you can't be too careful. A mother and daughter. The mother was telling the daughter how she had a new family and there wasn't room for her, so she had to go live with her dad. Edit for more info. The daughter was around 12 or so. When I was taking the order, the mom was bragging about how awesome her new family was. When I came back to check up, I heard, "So I don't have time for you anymore and you have to go with dad." Lots of tears ensued. Only reason I didn't spit in her food was because she already had her food. I was praying she ordered dessert. A dad with his twin daughters. One was skinny, one was nominally less so. He was begging the skinny one to eat, and she had this angry, stressed out expression on her face. It broke my heart.